these are all the tools that you're going to need to do your resin piece. We'll go through each and every one of them, and I will also have a PDF for you with them listed and where you can get them. So first off, this is the epoxy that I like to use. I like to use moss epoxies. This particular one is the Art Pro. I also will regularly use Tabletop. I can't say that I've noticed a difference when working with it. I like both of them. The nice thing with the moss epoxies is they have less VOCs than house paint. So while most resins are very toxic to breathe in and you need a respirator, I don't find that it's necessary with the moss epoxies. As well as I always work right on our kitchen table by our patio doors, and I typically have them open so there's lots of fresh air and ventilation. I also like to protect my table with just shower curtains from the dollar store, just cheap ones. I try to get the thicker ones that they have. They last quite a while. The resin, the cured resin will just peel right off of them, and it's just a cheap way to protect your surface and your tables. This here is just some play box sand that I use for the beach part of the resin piece. And then I have assorted shells and stuff like that that I've collected. Some from Amazon, just some from the dollar store. If you live near a beach, you can also use shells from your beach. Just make sure that they're completely clean, sanitized, that sort of thing. We don't want any living creatures in your piece. I use sealing wax to prep the back of my wood board surface, and we'll go through that. It's going to help the resin drips come off a lot more neat and cleanly when you're done. So you don't have to do this, but you're going to really appreciate that the resin drips come off so much easier and cleanly. I use painter's pyramids to prop my piece up so the resin piece or the resin drips can drip off of it rather than making a pool attached to my art piece on the table. And then a retractable razor scraper, and that is what we're going to be using to take the resin drips off after the piece is completely finished and cured. You want to make sure you have a level and make sure that your piece is level before you even start pouring any resin. If it's not level, you're not going to have any control over where the resin pools and drips and runs to. I am using a wood panel. So this is 8 by 8. It's a perfect size for starting out. It's not too large of a surface. You can start with how large you want, but for starting out when you're just beginning and don't know exactly all the ins and outs of it, a smaller piece is a lot less intimidating, and it'll give you some good practice. For my white, I use Cast and Craft pigment, and I put that into the mixed resin to do the white for my foam for my waves. Once you've blown out your waves, you're going to use a baking torch. That's going to help the cells pop. Don't know why it does, it just does. I have silicone stir sticks and silicone cups for mixing and pouring my resin. You don't necessarily need to have silicone cups. You can reuse fast food cups. The only thing is these have measurements right on them, so it makes it very easy to make sure you're mixing equal parts of the part A and the part B of your resin, or however your particular resin that you choose has the ratio. Some of them are not equal parts, some of them are a little bit different. You want to follow the directions of the resin that you choose. We want to protect our hands with disposable gloves, whichever ones work for you. I know some people are allergic to certain things, but you definitely want to have your hands protected. We're going to be using our hands to smooth things out, and resin is really sticky. It's not easy to wash off your hands. It's also toxic, so you definitely want to be protected. So gloves, we're going to use some duct tape to take cured resin off of the silicone cups. It's just going to help clean them. They need to be cleaned between each and every single use, because otherwise that little dried bits and pieces in your resin will affect your piece. For this particular one, we're going to use a paintbrush and some acrylic paints. This one, I'm going to paint the wood board before pouring any resin. This is just a little bit easier when you're beginning, because then when you mix your resin, you're only going to need to have a clear one and a white one. You don't need to have all the different colors mixed. So for simplicity's sake, we're using a brush and we're going to paint the board. And then last but certainly not least, you need a heat gun. And you need to have a heat gun that has a few different tips to it. When we first use the heat gun, we're going to use it with the wide tip that it comes with, and you're going to use the heat from the heat gun on a low speed or a low setting, and you're going to use it to remove all the bubbles that have risen to the surface. Once all the bubbles are gone, you're going to use the fine tip and you're going to attach it carefully because this part will be hot by then. And then you're going to use this fine tip, and it's just going to help streamline the air and make blowing out the white for the waves a little bit easier. Last but certainly not least, just a clear container. We're going to put that over upside down and protect the piece while it's curing, because resin tends to attract dust and hair that is in the air, and this is going to help just reduce some of that a bit. You'll still want to make sure that you watch it, but this is just going to help protect it a little bit.